We got a little bit of a problem. My room is out of room. Ever since moving back home, I have had the recurring issue of there just being too much stuff around me. And every time I do a clean out, which is like every other month at this point, it still feels like it's not enough and there's inevitably some kind of mess somewhere. So I've been trying to relocate most of my crafting and cosplay stuff down to the basement because there's more space for it down here. My brother recently switched out his furniture and I received his old dresser, which was still in pretty good condition, but didn't look polished to me. So I wanted to do something fun with it and use that as a storage space for some of my crafting supplies, my fabric, my wigs, things like that. So let's check in with past me and see what we're working with. This is what we're working with here. This is probably about 15 years old and it's made primarily out of chipboard and not actual wood. So the fact that it's still holding up is a miracle. Some of the drawers are not holding up and have been surviving off of duct tape. I did a stress test and the one just keeps on breaking, so I'm gonna find a way to fix that too. The game plan is to stain this so that it looks kind of like normal wood, and then on the side panels I'm going to do some mural paintings. My sister gave me a really good idea to make it look like a tree trunk and have different things growing off of it. Then I'm gonna do the drawers, which I have a separate idea for that ties in. And then I'd like to add some decorative edging on the corners, some hooks so I can hang my heavier wigs, and my wig head's gonna go on top. So this is definitely gonna take quite a few days, but I'm really excited to see how it turns out. Let's get going. So this project was primarily a paint job. I knew going from black to brown was going to be a little bit difficult. The first thing that I tried to do was use wood stain to make it slightly more brown. And it went on nice and smoothly and glossy, but the color just didn't pick up no matter what I did. My dad interrupted me about halfway through this project to remind me to sand all of the surfaces that I was going to prime. So that I did with the drawers, because I forgot to do it on the sides, but that made relatively zero difference. So rather than have the wood stain be the base coat of paint, I used that as a primer and then just did an acrylic brown wash over top. This took way more time than I would have liked, but it actually changed the color of the wood, which in turn created a better base for the mural. This is going to be super detailed, and I didn't want all of the light colors that I was going to use to blend into the darkness too much and take 7 layers. So I put a thin base coat of white for every detail that I wanted to include. Here I'm doing the branches and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. I'm just kind of slathering paint on there in shapes and seeing where the whims of life take me. Once the white was dry, I could start coloring all of those spaces in. Of course, I started with brown for the branches because, wood is brown. Well, it's more of a brownish gray and black and earthy tones all mixed together, but brown is the general consensus. That being said, I did make an attempt to make the wood look slightly more realistic than cartoony and add some layers and depth to it. Here I'm just brushing on the little grooves and divots that wood has in a darker brown. This was mostly just a freestyle. I just filled in the space and followed the direction of the branch that I had created. I also used a tan to try to add some highlights. I used my fan brush and very lightly dipped it in, then super lightly brushed it over. This recording was not the best example. I think it got a little too goopy in some places, but where it got goopy, I went over with my finger or a paper towel to spread it out and make it look more like a highlight or a thin layer rather than just globs of paint. It was much more successful on the other branches than this one. This I'm just using to show you the technique. For the drawers, I kept it simple and did a gradient from dark brown to light brown to an olive green. This way it made it look like something was growing up out of the ground and getting progressively lighter until you got to the new part of the plant. This also took a couple of layers and I had a lot of fun doing it. Oh, that sanding that I did on the drawers earlier, by the way, did absolutely nothing to change the paint application because of the primer. It was all the same, took the same amount of time, every single one. I made it very redundant for myself. I worked on multiple drawers at a time, so this is what a finished drawer looks like, or at least a close to finished one. And the reason I went with this gradient is because I was putting flower petals on the knobs. I cut these out of scrap felt that I had since I think I was making Mabel in 2022. Again, hold on to your scraps, you never know when you're going to need them. I made a pattern out of some scrap paper and then trimmed and refined every single petal, so they looked semi-uniform. This was a little hard since felt is a very thick material, but I think I did a pretty good job. I made 2 in this orangey gold color and 3 in purple, so they would be alternating. Once I had the correct amount of petals cut out, I laid them out on top of the drawer to make sure that they all fit in place. I wanted there to be at least 6 on each drawer, and once I knew that the shape I wanted was correct, I hot glued them all on. These stayed surprisingly well. I was a little worried that hot glue wasn't going to be strong enough, but it was fine, completely fine. I think it looks absolutely beautiful all together, and the best part is that they stay on even when you're pulling the drawer out and pushing it back in. You kind of have to hold it a certain way, but it works. I took a break from the painting to do those felt petals, so I went back to the mural after this. I kept up with the flower motif and blended some paints together that were a similar color to the felt that I had. That way it was very cohesive. I used the same color it in technique that I did for the branches, and I did layers of white off camera and then layers of color on camera. I also added some leaves with some details. I really like how I did this leaf. The lines were very satisfying. I think altogether the paint job took about 10 hours over a couple days, not counting the drying time and the times that I had to step away and take a break because I got frustrated. And I think it turned out really, really pretty. I couldn't stop staring at it when I had finally finished it because I was just like, wow, I made that. After the paint dried, I took some command hooks and stuck them onto the side. I made sure that these were strong enough to hold my heavier wigs, and I did do a stress test off camera. Only one fell that I had to reattach, and they stayed very well the first time. I love you, command hooks. Never change. There's a small gap between the top and the side edges of this dresser, so I couldn't do the swirly shape that I initially wanted to. I had to improvise when molding the air dry clay to stick onto here. I'm sticking it directly on while it's wet, and then I re-glued it when it was dry. I still kept the little curly Q motifs that I wanted, but they just weren't the exact shape that I had originally planned. Then I painted them over green to match the paint that I had already put there. And once that was dry, I put things back into the drawers and was finally done. This is so cute. I just love looking at it and seeing all the flowers and stuff. Makes me so very happy. Since it's tucked away right now, you can't really see the murals on the side very well, which makes me a little bit sad, but eventually I'm gonna move some of this stuff and that stuff over there out and hopefully put like a clothing rack or something in there so it'll be more visible. Plus I'll be able to store my bigger cosplays, have them like hang over there or something. Yeah, it's a work in progress, this little space, but I think this is a good first addition to it. And now I can work on projects again slightly more organized than I was before. I have to work on my sister's Halloween costume, which is what that green wig is for. She's gonna be one of the Project Sakai girlies. And now all of my fabric and stuff is just in here that I can pull from. And I'm so glad that these drawers are like easy to open and shut despite having the petals on them. Like, I'm not afraid they're gonna rip off. So yeah, if you'd like to see more renovation of my crafting space, leave a like and a comment and a subscribe and hit all of the buttons, and I will see you as things progress down here.